Story 1. Once when I was working in an LTC facility, I was walking down the hall speaking to a CNA when all of a sudden, we heard the loud sound of water running in the bathroom. All the patients were in bed already, so I turned to her and looked like, "What is that?" We walked to the bathroom, which you could only enter by key, unlocked the door, and went in. The lights were out, so we turned them on. The tub water was running full blast into the tub. No one was in there. I walked over and turned the faucet all the way until the water stopped running. I said, "Why is this water running? Everyone's in bed." The CNA said strange stuff happens in that bathroom and on the floor all the time, including lights turning on and off and stuff moving around or turning on in that particular bathroom. What's weird was I heard the water turn on as I was standing near that bathroom and no one walked in and the handle had to be turned all the way to the right to turn it off. Story 2. I was working in an ICU and had a patient who would only repeat what was said to her and was with her all night. One time I went into the room and she started telling me all the ways she died. I died because of a narcotic overdose. I died because I took too much insulin. I died on a sunny Sunday afternoon, etc. Then later, she looked up at the ceiling and said, "They're all still there." I ran out of that room as fast as I could. Another time I had a blind patient who kept asking me what time it was all night long. One time I went in to check on him, and he says to me, "It's the witching hour." It was 3:33. I walked out. Story 3. I had a patient admitted into a room at about 0130. He was alert and oriented. He was rolled in on an ER gurney and started freaking out about him. Can't we see him? That he's not going to stay in that room, and he needs to be as far from that room as possible. We switched his room assignment and got him settled. Later in the morning, I asked who he was. He says that we need to have the room exorcised. He is apparently a very angry, dead mid-40s male. He didn't like another man in his room. That room was always really cold. Summer or winter. The lights used to come on for no reason. Story 4. I worked at an LTC facility as a night shift aide about 14 years ago. I worked in a hall I had never been in before. It was like 1 a.m. and I saw an elderly guy walk out of a room, down the hallway, and leave the facility. I went to that room and the resident was awake. Asked her who she was talking to, and she told me her husband always came to visit her late at night. I went to ask the other aide on the floor about it, and they told me the resident was 102 years old and her husband had been dead for like 20 to 30 years. Swear on my life that it was an actual person leaving that hall. I could even describe his outfit and hat. Needless to say, I didn't work that hall much anymore. Story 5. I worked at Cincinnati Children's, and there is a little girl who appears at the bedside of dying children the day before they pass and tells them it's going to be okay. They even mentioned her as a household name in orientation. In Indy, at a children's hospital, we had a patient pass in surgery, but her room was haunted. A little African-American boy saw her one night and said, "She looks like me and has one of these and one of these," pointing to his central line and GT. She also had a central line and GT. Here in CO, I just stayed at the Stanley Hotel. It's the hotel that inspired The Shining. Stephen King stayed there and felt like his bartender was a ghost and saw 2 little girls on the 4th floor when there were no other guests. I woke up every 20 minutes to nothing and had a sock on my perfectly made bed and a luggage tag and earring on my spotless bathroom. The next morning I bought a book about the hotel hauntings, and my hotel room was in it. Apparently, things go missing in one part of the hotel and show up later in my room. They also have a wounded veteran donated flag that has a spot that has started to fade into a silhouette of the original owner of the hotel. Story 6. I was a new nurse at our hospital and had only been working there a couple of months. I had brought a patient of mine up to day surgery from the ER for an endoscopy, and they called back down and asked me to bring her family up because she only spoke Italian and not enough English, and they needed someone to consent for the procedure. After dropping them off, I walked past the waiting room to head back down the hall to the elevators. I took the back way to get to the ER, and the hallways are all deserted. It used to be the pediatric wing of the hospital, but that is all shut down for years, and the rooms are just empty and full of broken equipment and beds and crap. As I reached the old nurse's station at the T-junction between the pediatric hallway and the hallway that goes to the elevators, I saw a little girl standing across from the nurse's station further down the hall. She had big pigtails, was wearing a brown dress, white shoes, holding a teddy bear. I thought perhaps she was a family member who had walked away from the day surgery waiting room. I was concerned that she would go into one of the rooms and get hurt or lost, so I said, "Hey little girl, what are you doing? You don't need to be over there, you're going to get hurt." And I walked around the nursing station to go grab her hand and bring her back. I shit you not, she vanished as I got about 15 feet away from her. Every hair on my body stood up straight, and I turned and ran like a bat out of hell down to the elevator. I pounded that button for what seemed like an eternity until the elevator got to the floor. As I got back to the ER, I walked up to the nurse's desk, white as a sheet, and one of the older nurses looked at me and said, "Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you?" I remember babbling like an idiot as I tried to tell them what happened. After listening to me for a moment or two, the nurse said, "Oh, you saw the little girl ghost. She's been around here for years." And I remember saying, "Well, thanks for telling me about it before this." Apparently, the ghost has even been seen down in the ER, ducking in and out of patient rooms and peeking around curtains. My wife worked up on the 7th floor, and she said that one time on nights a whole row of patient rooms started yelling about a little girl that was running around in the rooms. I guess she gets around. Story 7. The very small step-down unit I worked in was having nighttime staffing issues. I agreed to rotate to nights to help them out. It was a 4-bed, newly renovated unit. It was around 3 a.m., and I was watching the monitors, listening to the patients snore. The pencil drawer slid open. I didn't think much of it since the hospital was on a very busy avenue, and I thought it was caused by the vibrations from the traffic on the busy road below. After sliding the drawer back several times, I decided if the drawer felt it needed to be opened, so be it. Several minutes later, I heard a noise in the room, the patient's bathroom door opening, and the sound of someone pushing in 4-pole. Since I did not have a clear view of the bathroom, I just thought one of the staff members from the main floor had dashed in to wash their hands. I looked up from my monitor viewing to see a patient we recently had in the unit. It was Mrs. G, an older woman who came in with atypical chest pain and became septic due to a gallbladder issue. She evidently had expired in the unit. Although the hospital itself had been on this site for years, the unit was newly renovated, right down to tearing down walls and putting up new ones. I heard the patient's bathroom door open, and again I heard the rattling of the 4-pole and shuffling feet. I looked up and saw Mrs. G standing there in the middle of the floor, one hand pushing the 4-pole, the other hand on top of the pump on the pole. She stopped walking, turned and waved, nodded her head, said everything was going to be okay, took a few steps, and disappeared. It was quite a sight to see. Shortly after that vision, one of the nurses from the floor came in to see if I needed anything. I told her no, I was okay, and asked her if she had ever seen a ghost in the hospital. She looked at me, gasped and asked no, why, and I explained to her what had just happened.